Hi, I'm Steve Gunnels. I'm the District Attorney in Deschutes County, and I'm going to walk you through an overview of what we do in the District Attorney's Office. In Deschutes County, we have one elected District Attorney, that's me. We have one Chief Deputy District Attorney who is the right-hand person for the District Attorney who handles supervision of the entire office along with the District Attorney and also handles significant cases for the DA's office. We have two deputy DA supervisors, 22 and a half deputy DAs who go to court every day to prosecute crime. We have a business manager, one investigator, and 23 and a half legal assistants. We also have 7 and a half victim advocate positions in Deschutes County. Victim advocates are essential to help victims maneuver through the criminal justice system, which can be very challenging for people who are not familiar with it. The DA's office budget is just over $14 million per year, and the victim assistance budget, which is a separate budget, is about $1.5 million. Now I'm going to show you a short video that was prepared by the National District Attorneys Association that kind of gives an overview of what every DA's office does and how we function.
There's been a lot of attention on district attorneys lately and the prosecutor's role in the criminal justice system. But you might not know all of the things the DA does, the limits on the DA's power, and the ways the DAs have already been changing their approach to prosecution in recent years. The DA's #1 responsibility is keeping our community safe. We do that in 3 basic ways that we call the 3 Ps. Prosecute criminals who break the law, work to prevent crimes from happening in the first place, and protect and support victims of crime and make sure their voices are heard. When you think of the DA, you probably think prosecutors. While that's a big part of our job, the power we have to hold criminals accountable is carefully defined by the law and our ethical responsibilities. When someone's arrested, we carefully review the facts and the evidence. We can only file the criminal charges we believe we can prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Our job includes protecting the rights of the innocent, as well as those we charge with a crime. Then, the case moves through the justice system, which provides checks and balances and accountability. Public defenders, criminal defense attorneys, and judges all play a role in how the case will resolve. Prosecutors alone don't determine a person's punishment if they're convicted. That's up to a judge and jury once we've proved our case. Our goal is always fair and equal justice for everyone, but also justice that's smart and reflects the needs of our society and the will of the people. As prosecutors, we also have the ability to give people second chances. That's why we work with special courts that steer people away from jail, still hold them accountable, but get them the help they need to break the cycle and stay out of jail. Help like mental health treatment, finding a place to live, or kicking a drug or alcohol addiction. We also support restorative justice programs that help offenders understand the harm that they've caused to a particular victim or community. That's one way we prevent crime, but there are lots of others. We work with youth to help them make good choices and stay in school. We support programs that help people who are coming out of prison to find jobs. And we let the public know how to recognize and report crimes like child abuse, elder abuse, sexual assault, and human trafficking. The third big part of our job is protecting and supporting victims of crime. In a typical year, the DA's office comes into contact with thousands of victims, and we help them in lots of ways. We help get them emotional support for the trauma they suffer from having a child or loved one murdered, or the emotional pain from a violent crime like rape. We help victims even when we can't file charges against the person who hurt them. We sometimes even use therapy dogs to help them testify in court and tell their story. Arf! We do all of this on behalf of you, the people. We embrace reform, but will always work to make sure change happens in a way that continues to keep our neighborhoods and you safe. And we're accountable to you and to the laws in every state across the nation.
One of the main things we do in the DA's office is to file criminal charges if we believe that we can prove the case. If we do file the criminal charge, we handle the case all the way through trial and beyond, including through parole hearings, sometimes years, sometimes decades after the conviction in the case happened. We handle juvenile cases, including juvenile delinquency cases that involve a person under the age of 18 who is alleged to have committed a crime. And we review all death investigations in Deschutes County if it was an unattended death. Unattended means not under a doctor's care at the time of death. If there's a felony charge in the case, we present the case to the grand jury and then take the case to court if an indictment is returned in the case. In addition to the reactive part of what we do, we also collaborate with community partners to try to improve the criminal justice system and how it responds to crime. That is either to prevent crime from happening or to better deal with crime after it happens. The Child Abuse MDT is a good example of that. We work with the Kids Center, with police agencies, and with DHS and others to review cases of child abuse in our community and make determination whether things could have been better in that investigation, and going forward how things can be better so that we get good evidence and we take care of the child who was abused in the case. We work with the sexual assault response team. We are on the elder abuse MDT, the multidisciplinary team, for cases in which somebody who is over the age of 65 is alleged to have been abused by another member of the community. We handle mental health court in Deschutes County, which is a growing field for us, and we can talk about that a little bit later. And we handle a number of other programs that are collaborative in nature, where we're working with community partners to try to make the criminal justice system work better. We also work on proactive things, and one of the big things that we work on is training. We train law enforcement virtually every day. We're at patrol briefings or detective briefings to get police agencies up to speed on new case law as it comes in, new statutes as they come in, and to field questions from law enforcement so that we're all kind of working from the same sheet of music when it comes to what the law is in Oregon and what the expectation is in an investigation. We also have a number of programs in our office that are more on the proactive side, including the Veterans Intervention Strategy and the Emerging Adult Program. The program I'd like to highlight is the Veterans Intervention Strategy, which has shown very positive results. The idea behind the Veterans Intervention Strategy is to take veterans who are involved in the criminal justice system because they have committed crimes, and to try to work with them to get them connected again to services that they're entitled to as veterans and get them back on the right track. And that program has been very successful. What we see with many of those cases is that we have veterans who have post-traumatic stress from their service in our military. They oftentimes have substance abuse disorder as well, and they lack a support structure to get back on track. And many times they have done a great deal of damage to their family relationships and with other relationships, and so they're kind of dependent on the system to get them connected to services rather than having friends or support groups that they can rely on. So what this program does is it connects veterans with that support network so that the veteran can get their lives back in order and become crime-free. It does reduce recidivism and fosters rehabilitation in order to promote community safety. We've had lower than 10% recidivism rate for our graduates, which is a very positive number in the criminal justice system. In the DA's office, we have specialists. We have people who specialize in person crimes, such as domestic violence and sexual abuse crimes. We have a prosecutor who handles juvenile cases almost exclusively. We also have prosecutors who handle property crimes, including elder abuse, where an elderly person has their savings stolen, or retail theft, which is a growing problem in our community. In addition to that, we have prosecutors who handle traffic crime cases, which is a real specialty in Oregon because the law related to traffic crimes, in particular driving under the influence of intoxicants, is a highly technical area of the law, and people who practice in that area have to know all of the case law and all of the statutes that relate to that. I'm often asked whether crime is up or down in Deschutes County. The answer is complicated, but the overall crime numbers in Deschutes County are down, which reflects the national trend. In 2019, which is the last normal year, in Deschutes County we filed almost 5,400 criminal cases. And this past year we filed about 4,600 criminal cases. That was in 2024. When you ask the question whether crime is up or down, it depends on the category. And one of the main reasons that crime is down overall between 2019 and 2024 is that under ballot measure 110, certain crimes, that is drug crimes, were decriminalized, which means that many crimes that would have been charged in 2019 could no longer be charged after that. And so that accounts for a big part of the reduction in cases. But what we've seen nationally and what we see in Deschutes County is that other classes of charge are also down, and those are positive signs. The decline, the precipitous decline really, in total drug possession charges filed by year. And so what you see is in 2019, that's the blue category on your left, the numbers of cases was the kind of the normal trend line in Deschutes County. And for example, we filed 600 possession of methamphetamine cases and 250 heroin possession cases in 2019 in Deschutes County. And then you follow that trend line and the number kind of drops off a cliff in those categories, and that's because of Measure 110. Measure 110 legalized, or decriminalized at least, the possession of methamphetamine and heroin of a user amount. That is a relatively small quantity. On your right, you see the trend line for possession of fentanyl. And in 2019, fentanyl was virtually unknown in Deschutes County as a street drug. And then as it became a known quantity here in Deschutes County, that was during the time of Measure 110, and it was not an offense that could be charged as a crime here. So in the following years, as it started to become more common for people to be in possession and use fentanyl, the numbers stayed relatively suppressed, but we still had people who were getting caught and charged with possession of fentanyl. Shows some other categories of cases where we've seen a change in the number of charges, and at least in the case of driving under the influence of intoxicants, a significant drop in 2020, and and then a rebound after 2020 to a more normal, very high number that we have here in Deschutes County for driving under the influence of intoxicants. In 2019, you had almost 1,200 cases, and then in 2020, a drop of 745. That is largely a result of the closing of bars in 2020, a big part of 2020, and limited enforcement action by law enforcement during that period for that crime because of the changes under COVID. You see theft cases continuing to decline here in Deschutes County. Those are charges, and that also reflects the number of referrals that we're getting from law enforcement. Domestic violence has declined as well. That reflects the number of referrals that we receive as well as the charges that we file. And sexual abuse, similar reduction. I have a low degree of confidence that we're actually seeing less sexual abuse and less domestic violence, but the number of reports of those crimes has declined. This chart shows the trend of murder cases in Deschutes County, and what you see on the left is in 2019 we had one murder here, which is a typical number that we had seen up to that point, either 0, 1, or 2 murders in Deschutes County. A bad year would be 2 murders. And then 2020 rolled around and we had 4 murders. The following year, again, we had 4 murders, and that started what we believed was a very bad trend. We didn't know that it was going to get even worse the following year. In 2022, we had 8 murders, which for us is an extremely disturbing number. The number then dropped back down to a higher plateau than we had experienced before 2020, 4 in 2023, and 5 murders in 2024. This year, in 2025, we have had 4 murders in Deschutes County about midway through the year. It appears that the murder rate is going to stay up for a period of time. I will say that I attribute it to drug use and mental illness, because every case that we're aware of, the suspects' mental state, the individuals have mental illness and have used drugs, or the crime involves drugs. And so we are seeing that as kind of the impetus to crime in all of these murder cases since 2020, and that is a disturbing trend. I'll be really happy to answer any questions and talk to you about any other subject that we're involved with in the DA's office at County College. I'll talk to you about our Victim Assistance Program, which plays a critical role in what we do in the DA's office. The mission of the Victim Assistance Program is to help guide victims of crime through the criminal justice system, which can be very complex and confusing, and to try to help them get closure and justice, and in cases in which they've been harmed financially, restitution. Crime is somebody who has suffered harm due to a crime and is recognized by the law as a victim. Victims have specific rights in our criminal justice system, and they are due process rights. They have the right to notice. That is, they have a right to know what their rights are and know when hearings are going to be held on their case. They have a right to be consulted about plea negotiations in a case as well. And ultimately, they have the right to be heard, so that we in the DA's office will communicate with victims of crime, particularly violent crime or person crimes, and get their input about how the case is going to proceed. and we also reach out to them to let them know of future court hearings and give them a chance to be heard in court. Advocates help victims of crime, anyone who comes in asking for help seeking protective orders such as domestic violence restraining orders or stalking protective orders, victims of felony and misdemeanor person crimes, and next of kin in cases where the victim of crime has died. Advocates provide trauma-informed care to victims through information about the criminal justice system. They offer support and resources. They let the victims know about their rights as soon as practicable. They offer safety planning for victims who are at risk. They accompany victims to court. They help them get protection orders from the court. And they make sure that the prosecutor on the case is aware of any victim compensation or restitution that is being requested. Our victim advocates also provide the victim with realistic expectations of the criminal justice system and help them address potential issues before they arise. Protective orders that victim advocates help victims obtain include domestic violence restraining orders, stalking protective orders, elder abuse protective orders, sexual abuse protective orders, and the most common order is the criminal no contact order that accompanies criminal cases in which a victim is listed. Advocates help victims outside of the courtroom, including responding to crime scenes to help victims of crime. They provide advocacy during safe kit collections. Those are sexual assault kits in the hospital. They provide victim support during law enforcement or deputy DA interviews. They have responded in the cases we've had here in Deschutes County and even in Douglas County to mass casualty incidents to help victims, and they help the victims get emergency protective orders when the victim requests it. Primary goals of the Victim Assistance Program include recognizing and providing interventions when the victim is ready for that, including helping victims get away from an abusive situation, to empower victims of crime and to give them control over the outcome of a case when possible, and to ensure that victims are connected with support services through the criminal justice system and beyond. I look forward to answering any questions you have about the DA's office or the Victim Assistance Program at County College. Thank you.